What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders Podcast, aka The Whip Show. You know what it is? I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and I am here with my partner.
Once again, here, devastating Daryl Pace.
Daryl, what's been going on, man?
Oh, man, it's been going great as always, man. It's been, I'm excited. I mean, we've had a heck of a series going on here, getting in depth, letting people have an opportunity to tell their stories. And it's just been exciting to be a part of the show and seeing everything that's been happening. And now I'm extremely excited about, giving folks the opportunity to tell their stories today. So.
For sure, man, for sure. This one, to all the listeners and everybody watching the videos, y'all know what it is. Normally, we on here having fun. We done had some great episodes. Check them out. We done had Alpha Jr., everybody on here. You know what I'm saying? C.W. Anderson. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, check them out. But this one is going to be a little bit different because today we're going to talk about the speaking out thing going on right now in the wrestling world. Daryl, could you let people know a little about what's happening with speaking out?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's taken the internet by storm. I think it started on Instagram and kind of spread out, where it's been a hashtag speaking out, where women and some men in the wrestling industry have been using that hashtag to speak out and tell their truth. Issues where they may have had harassment or verbal or physical or sexual abuse in the wrestling industry, either, coming up through training or working in different organizations. And again, we've seen multiple people coming forward, telling their stories and using that hashtag. And the number is just growing. I mean, I think initially, the last time I checked, it's over 35 people, different stories coming forward, and some multiple stories, multiple accusations on the same wrestler or performer. So it's been a huge ongoing on social media right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. And with that being said, we felt it was our duty here at the Whip Show to discuss what's going on. And we got two very talented young female wrestlers on the show today. We have Jessica McQueen, a.k.a. Jessie Mack, and we have my wrestling sister, Miss Vanessa Douglas, a.k.a. Sabrina Kyle. How you ladies doing today?
Doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
I feel you. Well, we brought you ladies on. Like I said, both of you guys are great talents in the ring, but you've also dealt with some little craziness going on with this speaking out. But before we touch base on that, Jessica, let's start with you first. Can I get a little background of you as a wrestler?
A background on me? I'm pretty much just a mouthpiece.
Okay.
I'm 5'1", so all I have is my mouth. So I like to, talk a big game for such a small person. I've only been doing this for about 3 years now, so I'm still kind of relatively new to the scene. But I will be on hiatus because I am pregnant now, so go me.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, Vanessa, and if I slip and call her Sabrina, y'all, that's her work name, so you just gotta understand. But Vanessa, could you tell me a little bit about your history?
Well, you know me since I was 17.
This is true.
I'll be 30 this year. I started when I was 15, so I'm about 15 years in. And I just do an old school style wrestling. I used to wrestle a lot down in Detroit. Now I'm mostly stay here. I work for Lou Crank sometimes down there, but other than that, I stay around here.
For sure. Hey, special note, Daryl, me and Sabrina actually wrestled each other one time for the world title.
Oh my goodness. Was it a women's title?
No, world title.
He was the women's champion. I was a long story, man. We'll tell you another time. But anyway, with that being said, like I said, we're on here for the speaking out thing. So I know both of you guys had situations. So if you don't mind, Sabrina, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what you've endured, in the wrestling business coming up?
Well, when I started 15 years ago, you didn't talk about this stuff, right? It wasn't until recently that you talked about this stuff. So I've had run-ins with so many different guys, but you don't think of it as it being an issue because you're kind of told that it's part of the business and you're supposed to just deal with it. So it's very rarely that we have our own change room or, you know, that we have someone there to, you know, just kind of that we can go to in the back and be like, I'm uncomfortable with this person, because really in the wrestling business, you don't know who you can trust. And especially as a female, you don't know who you can trust. So I will say one name for sure. When I started, Michael Elgin was around here, and I started seeing his dick when I was 16 years old. Like just pulling it out, showing everybody. He would put porn on in the locker rooms, and I was just so uncomfortable all the time. So that's, you know, but that's something that we, and I'm sure Jesse can say, we deal with that shit every show. There's someone who has to just be naked all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
you know, I don't think, like, there's some guys where, not like they're naked, but they'll make jokes and I'm friends with them, so it doesn't bother me that way. But when it's a complete stranger or someone that, you know, you said, hey, like, I'm not interested, and they continue to do that. But especially with someone like Michael Elgin, you don't want to come out and say, hey, this person's made me really uncomfortable, because 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't have wrestled on those shows anymore.
Right.
So let me ask you this. I mean, because you know, I'm assuming with both of you, right? You grow up, you watch wrestling, you've seen it on TV, you're like, oh, this is cool, this is great. And so Vanessa, like tell me, like, you know, when you first started, like, how do you, I mean, you know, again, you're a woman in a mostly male industry. First of all, because we want to kind of understand how things evolved here. Like, how did you kind of get into the business, and then when did you first start seeing some things that, hey, you know, I didn't know it was going to be like this?
So like I went to a school, I had been looking for a school since I was 12, and I met someone at an internet cafe that was training, and they took me up to the school. The next day I signed up, and I want to say it was about maybe 3 weeks, not even, where guys were fighting over me. Like, they wanted to work spots with me. They wanted to chain with me. You know, I was like, but I'm 15 years old at that point, and I can say this, I had never even had a boyfriend. So up until my trainer, which is Reggie Marley, started training there, like, I dealt with guys private messaging me on, I think it was MySpace at the time.
It would have been
Yeah.
MySpace.
Yeah, appropriate stuff. And also MSN Messenger was the other thing where people would message me. And then I took it to my trainers. At the time it was Ernie the Executioner Moore, who was already in his 60s, and another guy who ran the school. And Ernie took it very seriously, because they'd had girls come in before, and no girls had stayed longer than a month, because they just would leave. And so he dealt with it really well. Like, he told the two guys that were bothering me, like, you need to quit it out, or you're not allowed to come train here anymore. So that stopped. And then once Reggie started training, I didn't have a lot of issues going forward, because the Jamaican Sensation was my trainer, and people didn't want to fuck with him, right? Like, people didn't want to make me uncomfortable, because they knew if they made me uncomfortable, I'd tell Reggie Marley. And he was like my brother. So, and then same thing, like when I worked, so I worked for Farhat a lot, and that's where I met Whip. And like I said to you the other day, I never had an issue at that show, because I think people knew that I was close with Whip, and I would tell him, like, anytime I was uncomfortable. So I'm lucky that I had, as I got older, I had people that I could go to. And part of the reason I'm coming out now and speaking about this stuff is, in the business, I'm one of the veteran girls, especially in Ontario. And I want people like Jesse, or, you know, other girls that are coming in, or even guys, to know that, hey, like, it's 2020 now, and you shouldn't be uncomfortable in a business where you work and you get paid to work. Because that's what this is. It's a business. And in any other business, if someone did the stuff they do in wrestling, like, they would get fired and sometimes arrested.
And I'm glad you touched on this. And Jesse, I want to ask you, both of you guys, I want you to answer this. But first, Vanessa, like I said, you've been around the business for many years. You know how it was when we started. There was a lot of things they call ribs. But one thing I noticed with some of the young ladies that came into business back in the day, the trainers, and not necessarily, not obviously not yours, but some of the trainers, some of the guys would want the ladies to prove they were one of the boys.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they did activities that make them feel like, to try to make it seem like, well, if you're one of the guys, it shouldn't bother you. So what do you think about that mentality that you think it was grooming to try to get them to do things that wasn't appropriate?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's one trainer specifically in Ontario that was grooming a 16-year-old girl, and it went under the radar forever. I knew about it, and I was told to mind my own fucking business when I brought it up. Because I said, this isn't right. This shouldn't be happening. And I realized that me saying this on a public platform at that time, and what year would that have been? Oh my God, like 2008, I wouldn't have wrestled again in Ontario.
Now, one thing that's striking to me is the age, right? I know we've heard, of people breaking in young. Is this typical though for women 16, 15 breaking into the business? I'm just wondering if that's something that people are trying to get younger women involved, or is that normal?
I think it's more rare for girls. Like Jesse, you were what, 27, 28?
I think I started training when I was like 25, 26.
Yeah. That's most girls around here, I think. With me, it was like I was determined to wrestle, and I didn't want to wait till I was 19. There's a lot of young guys. I don't think there's that many young girls around though now.
No, 'cause, like what is Safe Travis is what, 19 now, I think, just turned 19.
Yeah. So he started he was 17 when he started training.
I think so.
But I like young guys, when they come in, they get ribbed and, they get beat up and whatever, which isn't right. But a lot of them aren't, targeted sexually like the females are. And when you're 15, like, you don't know that's wrong, right? Because you're like, oh, well, maybe I am interested in this guy. Maybe I do like this person. But when you're 15, you can't decide that. Like, you're not mature enough to decide that. And especially someone who's training, I've been reading a lot of these speaking out stories in the United States, and I see that a lot of the time it is trainers or people that girls trust that are doing these things to them, that are supposed to be like their brothers and taking care of them.
Well, Jessica, let me ask you a question. We were talking a little bit through Messenger the other day, and could you talk about your story a little bit as far as it relates to all this?
Well, I come from my whole perspective on everything is a little bit different because I did come into this a lot older than Vanessa, but for me, my accusations came from my coach, and I want to put it out there that it wasn't the owner of the gym, because he had no idea what was going on. I didn't feel like I could tell him. He wasn't somebody that I could easily approach, right? Just because, again, it's a male-dominant world, and I'm very much aware of this. I'm so used to kind of getting myself into these male-dominant workplaces and all this stuff. And so when he started to say things to me, I would just kind of shrug it off and kind of okay, whatever, sure, kind of go with the flow. But then it didn't really I have to be honest, it didn't really register until all of this movement came to play. And I'm going back, because I had talked about it with a few guy friends of mine that are in the industry, and they're like, well, go back, take a look, see what you see. And he's like, and if this is something that you should be speaking about, then do it. And I went back, and they were bad. And this is a trainer that has easily 30 years on me. And it's just but at the time I just kind of shook it off, oh, it's the industry, this is what I'm doing, but it's not okay. And I want people to know that it's not okay, and that they should be speaking out, and they should be kind of owning up to this. They shouldn't be getting taken advantage of just because they're being trained, and if they feel like they have to do what the trainer tells them to do. You know what I'm saying? It's manipulation and taking advantage of people. And for me to be as old as I was is kind of embarrassing, because I kind of pride myself on being kind of being better than that, so that's why I'm kind of joining this whole movement, because I feel like people need to know that it's not okay. But if any of that made sense,
Understandable. Well, let me ask you guys this: as the names start coming out, and obviously it probably triggered different emotions, different thoughts in your head. As a worker, as somebody in the business, when you see these guys that have made it to a high level, and you will have to watch them on television. How does that make you feel? You know, especially even though obviously we know it's a work, when you see a guy, he's a face and all the fans love him, but you know deep down what happened. How does that, what emotion goes through your head then?
Well, for me, my my biggest thing was like when allegations against Joey Ryan started coming out, I had to reevaluate all of our interactions because I had worked Joey Ryan last year, I think, and like I knew about his gimmick. Like the promoter even asked me if I was comfortable with working Joey Ryan. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like I'm whatever. Like I was consenting to whatever we did, and I was comfortable with whatever. And if I wasn't, I was allowed to not agree to it. And but for with all these stories that these girls are coming out with, I'm like rethinking all of like just like in the locker room, all of these like different like interactions, and it's kind of freaking me out. Like it scares me because like maybe I'm not fully realizing what's going on now. Like it's very like it's very confusing and very hard at the same time.
You understand? Vanessa, what about you? When you see these guys make it and become national television stars, how did it make you feel? How does it make you feel?
Well, certain guys, like, there's no way that the people hiring them didn't know that they have this past and that they act this way. And the same with indie promoters that are putting out, you know, oh, I'm not going to have so-and-so on my show anymore. Like, you knew he was like that because he acted like that at your show in the back and you were there laughing about it. You know what I mean? One person in particular that got released last week from TNA was my abuser, and I didn't talk about it for 7 years. I hid it and I didn't talk about it and nobody knew. And as far as everyone knew, we had a consensual relationship and that was it. And like, I didn't even tell my mom, and like, what, you know how close I am with my mom. And it wasn't until a girl wrote something out and it was the exact same thing he had done to me 7 years ago that he had done to her 3 years ago. And so 7 years ago, I had already been in the business, right? And this person messaged me, and instead of being like, you know, I'm not gonna just go somewhere because I think I'm gonna get bookings at that point. But this person talked to me like they really cared about me and they wanted to see me go places and they wanted me to come down and train and meet the students, and they had female students that they wanted me to train with. And so I drove 7 hours to meet this person, and they assaulted me and then threw my shit out of their room like I was trash. And it's the exact same story that every other girl has had, that they've had with the same person. And to me, it's like, this was a house full of wrestlers. This person had a house, and every single person that lives in it was training or working or, you know, like an established worker. Their family, they're all workers. None of these people knew what was going on. Like, that's the thing for me is like, you know, people are going to be scumbags and some people can hide it really well. But if you're living with someone and they're bringing people into their house and assaulting them, you know what's going on. And you're just sitting there like, okay. And there's still people, there's a female to this day that's standing by his side that he didn't do anything wrong after like 10 different women have come out against him. And she's a worker. And to me, I was friends with this girl for 7 years because I thought, oh, well, I didn't know he was doing this to anybody else. I thought maybe it just happened to me. I second guessed everything. I thought, well, maybe I wanted it to happen because I went there to train and I went there to spend time with him, but that doesn't mean that I wanted to be assaulted. And this girl knew what was going on and she didn't warn me. Now, me as a worker, like I'm sure you can ask, I reached out to Jessie. I didn't even know anything had happened to her. I reached out to every girl in Ontario when all this started coming out. And I said, listen, like if something's happened to you and you're uncomfortable and you don't want to talk about it and you need someone to speak out for you, I will, because I'm at the point now where like they are the next generation of girls and the next generation of guys. And I don't want something like that happened to me to happen to one of my sisters or one of my brothers, because for some reason, this business attracts scumbags and they get away with it. And it's almost like they can't speak to women out of the business. They have no self-confidence out of the business. But once they're in a ring and they're main eventing, they're the big dog and they can do whatever they want and they're the king and nobody can take them off their throne. You know what I mean?
This is true. We've actually talked about that. I think a lot of the guys, and I have no problem saying it, really are off. It's unfortunate, but this business, like you said, it breeds a lot of strange, weird people, you know. And obviously the problem with that, like you just said, a lot of those guys in a normal social setting don't know how to act because they don't have the gimmick, the image, the imagery, you know. But I do got to ask this question, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for it. So I'm only asking this because I know this is what some people think. Just like with the Bill Cosby situation that was happening in Hollywood and everything, you're going to have people that say, well, I don't believe them, or why did they wait so long to talk about it? Touch base on what you would say to those people.
Well, I actually deleted some people off Facebook last week because they were like that's victim shaming, right? Like they're victim shaming these women. And as far as me waiting 7 years to come out, like I've just said to you, I didn't register that I had been assaulted. This person is on television every week in a business that I work in, was working around here with companies that I could potentially work for. And I was like, I don't want to talk about it, you know? And on top of that, a lot of girls have come out too and said like, these men have, so with me, this person interacted with me like they wanted a relationship and they wanted to, you know, be close with me. And they were sending me photos and they wanted me to send them photos. So I think this happened with a lot of girls, which is what I've read. And then when you get into the situation and you say, no, I don't want that, it happens anyway. So now they can say, oh, well, you wanted it, right? Like, it doesn't matter what happens up until the act. If a woman says no when it's happening, then it's not consensual and it's not okay. No matter what she said before that or after that, what happens isn't consensual. It's not okay. And so these people saying, oh, why'd you wait so long to come out? Like, people don't register it. A lot of women, even out of the business that are raped, they never talk about it because they're ashamed of themselves. And like the stuff with Jessie not coming out about her trainer, like I'm sure she felt that could destroy her. Like she's just getting in the business. That could destroy her entire career in this business. So people saying, oh, well, where's the proof? Well, I'm personally someone who I've deleted everything because I don't want to look at it. I don't want to be scrolling through my messenger and see these pictures or these messages from this person. I deleted this person out of my life. And it wasn't until someone else came forward and said, hey, this is what happened, that I went, holy shit, this has been happening to so many other women. Man. So to say, oh, well, you know, well, there's no proof. Well, I'm sorry, myself and 10 other women who have never met, who live in different countries, are saying the exact same thing. Do we have like a group where we all chat to each other that we're going to make up this story about someone and ruin their life? Like, that's what I don't get.
So, something I'd like to say, and as we get into this, is like, you know, for this show, we've done a lot of educating. You know, I know Deshaun, you know, Whip Dog here has kind of done an interview earlier where he kind of talks about how you get into the business. And when we talk about all these stories, we try to educate people how to get into business, what the difference between good trainers, bad trainers, you know, and how to navigate. What we want to do here, we don't want to be sensational. We're not trying to sensationalize this. At the same time, you know, we've got young girls who might be watching this, or young people, or young men, you know, that are watching this and getting into the business, kind of to know what kind of traps and scenarios are out there. And if they see that, you know, a red light to come on, you know, if you guys are comfortable, and we could do one at a time, you know, kind of, I guess, walk us through as far as your comfort zone is. This is the scenarios of what happened. And so, and then we will bring it up later. We do have a therapist online to help, you know, give a message to some of the people that are watching this, but kind of tell us the story. And so we can kind of know, you know, or people can know what happened and how you were approached and what can go wrong in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, with me, I had met this person 2 times before, and they started inboxing me and being overly nice that they want to spend time with me and they want to meet me, but then they want photos of me. And, you know, like I was 23, so you would think I would know better, but at that time, like I had just gotten out of an extremely abusive relationship. And that's another thing, is predators know when you're at your weakest, right? So some guy in the business that wants to be your friend, that you don't know them. Like, it's different if Whit messaged me and we're talking and whatever. I know that I can trust him. He's never been inappropriate with me. But you're talking to someone for a week that you've never met, and they're kind of, you know, they're on TV or they're working for bigger promotions, and they just out of the blue randomly message you and just start talking to you like they want some, like a relationship or something like to that effect. That to me is a huge red flag. And it still happens to me. And I'm in a 2-year relationship, and I get messages like that from workers where I'm just like, are you dumb? Like, I'm not, you know, so that just like, I would watch out for people being handsy in the ring. Cause a lot of girls, I don't think notice that, you know, if some, like, they're not joking around, right? It's not a joke. If someone touches you inappropriately, even if you're chain wrestling, it's not a joke. And it needs to be dealt with immediately. If you're in a match with a guy and they want to do all these sex spots
Like,
with you,
like bent you over, spanking you, right? Like those stuff. Like where they like put you over the knee and spank you, kind of. Yeah.
yeah. If you're not okay with that, which, listen, like, if you want to do a spot like that, fine, whatever. But if you don't know the person and they're just taking advantage of their spot in the ring with you, then I would reevaluate how you're gonna plan that match.
Yeah.
Let me jump in right quick for a question. That right there, I didn't know that. So a lot of times we had those type of spots. Sometimes the guys are the ones suggesting these when you're on the back talking about. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've suggested it. Like, I do, like, if I'm a heel and it's a fair show, then I'll suggest like a spank spot if I'm the heel and I'm working another girl who's the face, or like the spot where they get on your back and ride you around like a horse. Like, cause that gets over on a fair show. Like, that you have to work spots like that to get like kind of a, you know, they're not wrestling fans.
Yeah.
But when a guy says to me, I want to like bend you over and do like a suggestive pose. So, you know, 8 years ago, I would have been like, okay, because I'm just happy to be wrestling. Now I'd be like, no, okay, well, you can go ask my partner if that's okay, and then come back to me and tell me what he says if he thinks it's acceptable. But women shouldn't have to do that. It shouldn't even be brought up.
And
Yeah.
one thing that some people, you know, watching this may not know, you know, if you're only watching like a lot of televised matches, is that, you know, in the independents, there's a lot more intergender matches. You know, now on TV, you only see men, women, and women. They don't usually collide or touch. But, you know, just like back in the day, they had a lot more male on female matches. And then, of course, you know, in the independent, you know, scenes, they have a lot more male, female, you know, matches going on.
I think Jesse and I pretty much primarily work intergender matches.
Yeah. I do. That's mostly all the matches that I do. I don't know. It kind of happens for me, but like I have a certain way of going about it. Like, especially for like the Man Lucha or Acclaim Wrestling in Ottawa, especially in Acclaim, like I have like my full blown gimmick. He knows how to book it and he knows what I'm comfortable with. And all the guys in that locker room are very supportive, and they're all like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And we'd never do anything sexual ever. There was like maybe one like love triangle storyline, but there was nothing. It was more Mickey Mouse love than it was anything sexualized, which is totally fine with me. But yeah, like most of my intergenders, like I don't do, like, I know my boyfriend will kill me if I ever do anything with like ass slapping, and because he's a wrestler too, and I don't even do it with him. So
unless it's Jeff Black and Lenny Lilac.
actually, yeah, you know, I could probably I'm comfortable with them.
Well, let me ask both of you ladies right quick another question. The one problem that we've always had with independent wrestling, obviously, it's with the major promotions as well, but definitely independent. There's no regulations on nothing. Nobody's tested. They ain't, you know, we don't no psych test, nothing. If they pay their money to get trained, even if they are green or if they're marked, we put them in the ring. But with that being said, how do we clean it up for this type of stuff going forward from 2020 moving forward? How do we clean all this up?
Well, I think the biggest thing is people need to feel that they are allowed to come forward and say that they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not just women, men. So I'll just give a little history to this. I work for a company in Ontario, and they were booking a girl who managed, and I would notice her grabbing someone's ass or touching someone's chest and caressing them. And I could see that my friends were very uncomfortable with this. But as men, they're not going to say that. And it was one show I had my arm around my partner, and she moved my arm and put her arm around him and started touching him. And I had to leave the room. I knew he could handle himself. I left the room. And after that, I talked to her outside, and I was like, you're making people really uncomfortable. I'm like, it's like total double standard. If someone was to come over and grab your ass or start caressing your chest, they would be asked to leave the building. And you're doing this to them and they can't say anything. And kudos to the promotion, because I went to the owner and the owner dealt with the situation like right away. But that's what needs to be done. People need to stop saying, oh, well, this person works here or this person's done this or whatever. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, this person touched me or this person sexually suggested something to me and I'm not comfortable, then that person should be taken off the show.
You brought up earlier, even the locker room situation where you said that the men and women, you know, there weren't separate locker rooms. So everyone's, I mean, kind of going to that is like, is that, you know, how common is that where men and women are just changing together?
Oh, like almost every show.
Yeah, every show that I think I've had maybe one female locker room to myself, maybe.
I think we're on that show together.
Possibly.
The girls had all the one locker room. Yeah, we don't have our own space a lot of the time. I mean, there's a few places we work where the girls will all go into the bathroom and change, but the fans use that bathroom, right? So we're in there changing together. We're going to wrestle, but the fans are coming in and talking to us. So that would be, going forward, would be great if, and the other thing too is I've worked places where there's 2 locker rooms, right? And they're a lot of the time it's like you're working in an arena and they're like where people would go to change that are playing hockey. So there's a men's locker room and a women's locker room. And for instance, I worked a show in December and there was a women's locker room and there was only 2 girls on the show, which I'm sorry, if the men's locker room gets too full, you don't just come into the women's locker room and start changing and putting your shit on and showering with no shower curtain, because there's not enough room in the men's locker room. And that's exactly what happened that day. Guys just started coming in and taking over the women's locker room. And I'm like, well, what's the point? Like, and not even guys that we were comfortable with, just random workers.
Like, I feel like for me, it's just more of like, I feel like a dialogue needs to happen in situations like that, because I'm, like, I guess it's just because I'm so, like, every show that I wrestle for that I'm, like, reoccurring on, I'm more comfortable. Like, I will go and change, like, in a different bathroom or something like that. But if, like, there is a girls' locker room and a guys' locker room and the guys get overfilled, I would almost prefer it if they would just ask us first, like, just out of respect. And, like, 95% of the time, I'm probably going to say, yeah, no problem. Because, like, it's the fact that you went out and you asked us if it's okay. And making sure that we were comfortable. And, like, that's what I kind of am looking for when I do come back, right? So.
Well, Daryl, why don't you go ahead and throw it to the psychologist we got on the show right quick? If you go ahead and throw it to her and say hello.
No, certainly. I mean, when we, discussing a topic like this, we certainly want to be sensitive. And again, we always, we gear ourselves to those people that are, that are fans, but also to those new coming into the business. And we always want to provide, certainly a good message here, and then also education. So for the show today, we brought in a psychologist. Her name is Dr. Sharmika Newton, and she's here to provide resources as well as tips. If you're facing a situation, how to approach it. And I think there's other things that we might talk about. So we'll introduce her to the show. So hi, Sharmika.
Hi, thanks for having me.
One thing I'll throw out now is we've read some of the issues and things that have happened online, and I think Vanessa touched on it a little bit. Is there's almost like an emotional shutdown or freezing, when these kinds of situations occur. Can you explain that phenomenon where people it's not like this certainly not the women are giving the men any permission, understand that, but it's almost like a freezing where they just stop and things, and this thing occurs. Can you tell us a little bit of what's happening in the mind when this is going on?
Yeah, most definitely. So I think what you're referring to is like we have a sympathetic nervous system. And when we're experiencing trauma or dangerous situations, our body can respond differently. It can freeze, it can flee, or it can fight. And depending on people's temperament and past experiences with trauma and danger, it depends if they will freeze, flee, or fight, or try to fight the situation. And so what may be happening with some individuals is that we may be seeing that freeze response where, like I've heard, I think Vanessa and Jessica mentioned that these were people they were supposed to trust. These were people that were supposed to be helping them build their career, and they violated that trust big time. So with that being stated, it can cause the body psychologically to respond differently to the stimuli, and also depends on just, you know, how the individual is set up psychologically to handle trauma.
Well, that's definitely a good answer right there. Well, but like they just stated, these are people they trusted. And this thing, I know it just happens. It doesn't just happen in the wrestling world. It happens all over. But what would you tell somebody as far as to how to combat that? I mean, I know you're not in the wrestling world as like we are, but you heard their stories. How would you tell somebody to combat that if they are a young person, 18, 19, or even 23, 24, but they think, I can't say nothing because I'm trying to grow my career too?
Yeah, I was able to hear both their stories. And I think what they're doing right now is what other individuals need to do, which is the idea that silence is violence. So many times when we don't speak up, we are allowing the abuse to continue because the abuser doesn't get consequences or is not held accountable for their actions. So I think the biggest thing, no matter, even if it's someone you're in a position where you thought you could trust, I think the biggest thing is to speak up and to demand, even if I was hearing them speak about demanding policy changes with how professional wrestlers, and particularly women wrestlers, are treated. So I think it's speaking up, but then also requesting policy changes is important as well.